One of the biggest mysteries that has persisted through the entirety of Boruto TBV Vortex is Sarada's MANGEKYOU SHARINGAN. It was showcased in the final chapter of Boruto Part 1 as a massive reveal that would supposedly have an impact on not just Sarada, but Boruto's story as a whole. So going into the time skip, it felt like this dojutsu was always right around the corner. Almost every month there was question marks about whether this chapter would be the chapter where it made its first appearance. But the anticipation only continued to grow, as despite many moments where it felt like the Sharingan was imminent, it still by chapter 16 has not had as much as a mention. However, I feel as though with the story pivoting into this Shinju rescue mission, it's clear that the focus of the story has slightly changed towards Sarada. So it seems as though we may be getting to see this dojutsu in action after almost 2 whole years of waiting. And in this video, I'm going to describe exactly why I think it makes perfect sense for it to come in the next couple chapters, also the potential abilities that will help Sarada defeat the Shinju. Also, before we jump into that, I normally forget to ask, but if you are enjoying the content at the moment, then please consider subscribing to the channel. I'm going to be posting a lot more frequently going into December, so if you want to see more Boruto content like this, and also support the channel, then subscribing is the best way of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But with that all said, let's get into this video. So first of all, I want to go over why I don't think the MANGEKYOU Sharingan has been shown to us thus far in the story. As like I said at the beginning of the video, there has been many times where it feels as though it makes perfect sense to see that awakening in Sarada. However, we also need to consider what ended up happening in these moments, and whether the MANGEKYOU Sharingan would have actually made sense as opposed to having it come slightly later. So for starters, I think the main moment when people truly thought that the Sharingan was almost guaranteed to arrive was during Sarada's fight against Hidari. Sarada quickly realized that Hidari was actually her father in a humanoid Shinju form, and this obviously took quite a large toll on her mentally, as you could see with her facial expressions that was clearly showing that she was affected by having to fight someone who resembled her father so closely. So you also have to consider the fact that Sarada hadn't seen her father in almost 3 years. So seeing him clearly being taken over by this evil entity would once again trigger quite a huge emotional reaction inside of Sarada. That alongside the fact that she was also concerned about Boruto, as well as what he said about him losing Sasuke, it felt like this fight was the perfect way to introduce his power to her character, with this fight going further than someone just having to defeat the enemy in front of them, and is instead incorporating Sarada's emotions into the battle. And we all know that the MANGEKYOU Sharingan has massive ties into the user's emotions, as we know that the reason it even awakens in the first place comes from said individual triggering a change in chakra in their eye tied into their emotional state. So I can see why many fans were upset that it didn't come in this fight, but at the same time we must consider what it would have meant if she had used this power. The likelihood is that a MANGEKYOU Sharingan on its own wouldn't have been enough to defeat Hidari, and we saw that Sarada was able to counter one of Hidari's attacks, but that was under very limited circumstances, and Hidari, although an idiot, likely wouldn't have fallen for the same trick twice. And also, unless Sarada was able to blow him up like Boruto was able to, Hidari could have left the battlefield at any point to regenerate from his injuries. So if Sarada had used the MANGEKYOU Sharingan in this fight, it would have been extremely underwhelming, since it would give her a boost in power, and we would be able to see her new abilities, but when she ultimately still loses to Hidari, it would feel like this power doesn't really add anything to her power overall. As when you generally introduce a new power to a series, you generically don't introduce it and still have the person lose the battle. You see this done in a lot of shonen manga, where a character from the main cast undergoes an awakening that gives them the extra boost that allows them to win a losing battle. You also have to consider the fact that we don't even know whether Sarada is aware that she has awakened this new dojutsu. Perhaps it's a case where it will only emerge for the time being when Sarada is in a really tense and emotionally heightened situation. Since Sarada used her Sharingan in her battle with Hidari, but never went to the extent of using the MANGEKYOU Sharingan. I did say earlier that Sarada was relatively emotional after seeing Hidari, knowing it was her father. But at the same time, it almost seemed like Sarada didn't care about hurting Hidari. She just seemed to view him as another enemy that just so happened to have similar jutsu and fighting styles to her father, which maybe contributes towards the fact that she wasn't highly emotional or emotional enough to trigger that dojutsu to appear. So I can understand people's frustration as to why it wasn't shown during that fight, but I do believe that there is some justification behind this decision in my opinion. Plus, with us going deep into Boruto TBV Vortex and not seeing it, the anticipation has only risen to insane levels. And we know Kishimoto loves doing this to do this massive build up behind certain powers, where he shows us a glimpse of said ability, but locks it behind bars, leaving us fans constantly waiting and anticipating its return. He's done it with the Jogon for 7 whole years by this point, so I'm considering him only taking 1.5 years for the Mangekyo as a blessing, provided it does appear at some point in the next arc. Which actually takes me on to my next point, which is why I believe it makes sense for this awakening to come in the next arc as opposed to it arriving slightly earlier. Well, it all comes down to the build up behind this arc itself, especially for Sarada's character. In chapter 16 of Boruto TBV Vortex, we saw the relationship between Sarada and Sumire almost unfold before our very eyes, with Sumire seemingly reaching a breaking point and telling Sarada how she truly feels. You can tell that this moment or conversation between these two took a massive toll on Sarada mentally. Sarada is innately a very loving and caring individual, and she always wants to protect her friends and those close to her. But in doing so, she often forgets to, as Sumire says, think about how her actions affect other people. Sumire isn't saying that Sarada only focuses on herself, but what she is saying is that Sarada's actions, although have good intentions, often lack the consideration for how it may affect certain people. And Sarada, obviously oblivious to the fact that she was doing this, has now started to reflect on the moments where she may have not considered other people's feelings, which has caused her to start losing concentration during this mission, and she also looks very sad. So far since we've entered the Land of Wind, we've seen almost every shinobi on this mission noticing that something was up with Sarada, as well as their concentration on the mission at hand also being slightly lacking. This goes back to what I said about her reflecting on her previous actions and seeing how she may have hurt other people in the process, which she didn't know at the time, but now she has become aware of. And you can tell that she is being filled with a lot of regret for her previous actions. And I feel as though the reason Kishimoto did this prior to the Shinki mission is because he wants to make it clear that Sarada's character is going to be under a highly emotional state during this mission, which facilitates the conditions for the Mangekyo Sharingan to appear. But it's not only our emotional state that makes adding this new power up make sense, it's also the situation with defeating the Shinju that also makes it plausible that we can expect it to come in the coming chapters. The reason I say this is because the shinobi that have been deployed realistically do not stand much of a chance against both Matsuri and Ryu. Now I've seen many people predict that Boruto will also show up to aid the shinobi against the Shinju, however it's clear that this will not be the case. If you remember in chapter 16, Kashin Koji stated that the best plan of action to defeat Jura is to slowly decrease his numbers by defeating the Shinju one by one. But at the same time, they must only send a few shinobi at a time to complete this task, otherwise it would draw Jura's attention to the scenario, causing him to eventually show up. And if that were to happen, they stand absolutely no chance, and they simply would just have to flee the scene in that very moment. Also, we know that Jura's main target besides Himawari is Boruto, due to Boruto's vast knowledge of the Shinju and how they work, including the awareness of the Thorn Soul. Jura views Boruto as a troublesome entity that could ultimately ruin his grand plans, and hence if Boruto was to show up to the fight, much like Kashin Koji described with Himawari, Jura would pull up without any hesitation, making the battle almost unwinnable. But by not drawing too much attention to the situation, by just sending this small group of shinobi to defeat the Shinju, Jura would almost deem this as a waste of his time to show up to. However, with that said, currently the shinobi who have been sent on this mission, realistically, like I said, do not stand much of a chance against the likes of these Shinju. We don't know the exact powers of Matsuri and Ryu, but Ryu was literally able to toy with limitless code, to the point where Jura was worried that Ryu might kill him if he continued. Also, it's clear that Matsuri negative diffed Gaara, which is not a feat to be overlooked, as Gaara is actually, to his credit, quite powerful in the Boruto era. However, I believe that the reason Kashin Koji sent these shinobi, despite it currently looking like they don't have the power to defeat the Shinju, is actually exactly what I just said. They simply just don't look powerful enough. Now what I'm trying to get at here is Jura will likely know Matsuri and Ryu won't be able to get to Shinki without resistance from various shinobi, and Jura, I'm sure, is ready to show up if Boruto were to appear, as Jura's evaluation of Boruto's power tells him that Boruto is enough to threaten their plans of retrieving Gaara. However, Jura doesn't have the full scope of Sarada's power. He saw that Hidari was probably much stronger than Sarada in their battle, so like I said, in his evaluations of the situation, there is no need for him to come along to this fight. However, Kashin Koji can foresee Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan being the deciding moment in this battle. But due to Jura not being aware that Sarada has this kind of power, it would allow these Konoha shinobi to gain the upper hand on the Shinju, and hence why this mission will ultimately be a success. And also why Kashin Koji saw that the highest probability of them winning was for him to send specifically these three shinobi. But what will Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan abilities actually be that will allow her to defeat Ryu and Matsuri? Now this is a very complicated topic, and there are so many different possibilities of potential powers of this dojutsu due to how it came about being different from other Uchiha uses, where in Sarada's case it was love that triggered this awakening. But due to this being a very complex topic, I will give a brief overview of what I believe the Mangekyo Sharingan abilities will be, but if you want to see me go more in depth and give more possibilities, as well as add your own theories on this dojutsu's powers, then make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Anyways, let's get into these abilities. So first of all, I want to discuss the literal design of the Sharingan itself and why that may be important when it comes to predicting the abilities of said dojutsu. So we all know that Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan resembles the sun, and Kishimoto made sure that there was no discrepancy among Boruto fans that this was in fact a sun. Subsequently, what could her dojutsu being a sun even suggest towards her abilities? But I think it comes down to Sarada's specific situation. Now what I mean by this is currently Sarada is aware of the truth of Boruto and Kawaki's positions being swapped, and how Ada's omnipotence or charm ability is currently causing all of this to occur. Therefore, Sarada is almost forced into a position where she is going around trying to convince people or point them towards the truth of their situation and how they are all being deceived. You can see that this is pretty clearly the case, as at the start of Boruto TBV Vortex, Sarada straight away was preaching to Shikamaru, telling him that they were all being deceived. However, unfortunately, all of this was futile, as a mere mortal wouldn't stand a chance at trying to overwrite the doing of a god. However, Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan may be able to change this. If we look at the design of Ada's Senrigan, supposedly the dojutsu which facilitates the charm ability, or whatever allows her to deceive everyone, you can see that the design is actually a moon, the opposite of that to Sarada's dojutsu. And it's also clear that these two are both carrying out opposite tasks, where Sarada is trying to enlighten people about the truth of their situation and the actual reality at hand, and Ada serves to try and deceive everyone around her. However, I believe that it will actually be Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan ability which will serve as the way to make people realize the truth about Boruto. I believe that this ability will come as a form of genjutsu, where Sarada is able to communicate her reality to those inside of the genjutsu. Now, I don't want to take full credit for this concept, as I did take inspiration from NC Hammer. However, I must say that his video is outdated on the current situation, and hence lacks a context that supports this theory working in Boruto's story going forward. Now, we all know that the Mangekyo Sharingan tends to come with two abilities, one being a form of genjutsu, and one being a physical ability, like for Sasuke and Itachi being Amaterasu. However, Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan awakening, like I stated at the beginning of the video, didn't come from a place of hatred like it did with Sasuke and Itachi, as well as the rest of the Uchiha who were able to achieve this feat. Sarada awakened the Sharingan through love towards Boruto, which then subsequently means her abilities won't be to harm others, and instead it will be to heal them. I think that the awakening inside of Itachi and Sasuke of Amaterasu makes a lot of sense, as it provided them with the capabilities to carry out revenge and pain towards others, which ties into the hatred that caused the awakening of their Mangekyo Sharingan. And we know that the chakra inside of specified Uchiha is what triggers this ability to come out, and hence the abilities are tied into the change in yin chakra or spiritual chakra that was inside of their bodies at the time of the awakening, which is why Amaterasu serves as an extremely destructive flames that do not stop burning until the object it is on ceases to exist. However, Sarada's awakening, as previously described, did not come from a place of hatred, and hence due to it being love that caused the Mangekyo Sharingan to awaken, rather than having flames that do not stop burning and causing destruction until everything around it is gone, Sarada's flames will provide her with the ability to heal or restore whatever is touching the flames. And also, if you think about it, Uchiha generally tend to inherit the Mangekyo Sharingan abilities of their family, where Sasuke and Itachi, both being brothers, both ended up having Amaterasu. So it does make sense that Sarada's abilities will be some form of Amaterasu, but like I said, I do believe that instead of causing destruction, her flames will have the ability to heal people. Now, with that said, in the battle with the Shinju, healing people and letting the Shinju see reality, which they are already aware of, doesn't serve much of a purpose, and hence why I think the main attacking potency from this ability will be in Sarada's Susanoo. Now, unfortunately, I don't know much about Susanoos in Naruto and their innate abilities. However, it must be said that having a Susanoo will significantly boost Sarada's defensive capabilities, and also depending on the specific Susanoo abilities, it might also also provide her with the means of defeating Ryu and Matsuri, but I know my limits in terms of knowledge, so I don't want to go too deep into potential abilities without doing more research. Let me know in the comments if you want me to go a bit deeper into the potential abilities of Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan. Regardless, the abilities I've listed thus far are going to be a huge help for Boruto when it comes to his final battle with Jura. It will provide Boruto with insane constant backup and will establish Sarada's supporting role in the battle pretty substantially. But despite her being cast as a supporter of Boruto, much like her mother Sakura was in the Team 7 trio, Sarada will also be able to pack quite a punch if she needs to step up in any case scenario. Anyways, that is going to be it for this video. If you did enjoy them, please make sure to smash the like button, as it just helps this video get pushed out to more and more people, and it also lets me know that you guys are enjoying the content. Also, be sure to comment your thoughts on this video, as well as any feedback or stuff you want to add to this series that I may not have covered. And if you want to see more Boruto content like this, then be sure to subscribe so YouTube recommends my videos to you in the future. It also helps out the channel massively, and my goal is to reach 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you want to help us reach that milestone, then be sure to subscribe. But with that all said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.